Every child on Earth has held a toy, but the very first toy in human history wasn't plastic, it wasn't wood, it wasn't even carved by an adult. Archaeologists believe it might have been a smooth, ordinary pebble picked up by a child more than 2 million years ago, simply because it felt good in a small hand. And somehow, against impossible odds, traces of that kind of play have survived into the present day, buried in caves, graves, and riverbeds across the world. For decades, the story of early humans was written almost entirely around hunting, fire, and survival. Children barely appeared in it at all, as if they were just smaller, quieter versions of adults waiting to grow up. But that picture is wrong. Hidden in the dirt of ancient settlements are tiny clues that something else was happening too. Worn pebbles, miniature tools too small to be useful, small clay figures with no ritual purpose, bones polished smooth by tiny hands. These are not accidents. They are evidence of childhood itself. Go back nearly 2 million years to the dry grasslands of early Africa, and you find some of the very first hints. Early hominin children likely mimicked the adults around them, swinging sticks, stacking stones, chasing each other across the savanna, while lions and hyenas competed for the same land. Researchers studying primate behavior, our closest living relatives, have found that young chimpanzees and bonobos play constantly, using sticks as dolls and stones as tools long before they need them. If our ancestors behaved the same way, then play may be older than language itself. By the time of the Paleolithic era, tens of thousands of years ago, the evidence becomes unmistakable. In caves across Europe, archaeologists have found small clay figurines, animal-shaped carvings, and miniature spear points far too delicate for actual hunting. At sites in what is now the Czech Republic, tiny fired clay objects shaped like animals were discovered, alongside the footprints of children, pressed into the cave floor over 26,000 years ago. Some researchers believe these objects were among the earliest deliberately made toys on the planet. Then comes one of the most surprising discoveries of all. At certain Ice Age sites, archaeologists uncovered small spinning discs made of bone, with 2 holes threaded through the center. When string is pulled through and the disc is spun, it produces a strange whirring, buzzing sound. Today, we call this a buzzer or whirligig. It is essentially the same toy children still play with on playgrounds. A toy that predates the wheel, predates farming, and possibly predates settled human villages altogether. As humanity moved into the Neolithic period and began farming, toys began to change shape entirely. Children started playing with small clay animals, miniature pots, and tiny carts, almost certainly copying the adult world around them. This single shift tells us something profound. Play was no longer just about chasing or mimicking nature. It had become a rehearsal for civilization itself. In ancient Egypt, the evidence becomes extraordinarily vivid. Wooden paddle dolls with painted hair, carved animal figures with movable jaws, spinning tops, and balls made of linen stuffed with reeds have all been found in tombs and settlements along the Nile. One particularly famous toy was a small wooden lion or crocodile with a hinged jaw controlled by a string so that pulling it would make the mouth snap shut. Children were even buried with their favorite toys, suggesting these objects were treasured enough to accompany them into the afterlife. In Mesopotamia, archaeologists uncovered small clay carts with wheels, rattles shaped like animals, and tiny clay figures used in imaginative play, predating many other wheeled toys in history by centuries. Strikingly, the wheel appears in children's toys in some regions before it appears in actual transportation, which raises an unsettling question. Did the wheel begin not as a tool of labor, but as an object of play? In the Indus Valley civilization, thousands of small terracotta animals, whistles shaped like birds, and toy carts with movable axles have been excavated from cities like Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. Some of these toy carts were so precisely engineered that historians believe children were essentially trained, without realizing it, in the mechanics their society depended on. Ancient Greece gives us dolls with movable limbs, miniature furniture, rattles for infants, and a now famous device called the inks, a spinning disc on a string believed to have been used by both children and later linked to magic and seduction rituals among adults. Greek children also played a strikingly familiar version of knucklebones, using the small ankle bones of sheep or goats as an early form of dice and jacks, a game that, remarkably, is still played by children today in some parts of the world. In ancient Rome, the evidence becomes almost emotional. Wooden and ivory dolls have been discovered, some with jointed limbs that allowed them to be posed. One Roman girl named Craperia, Tryphena, was buried with an ivory doll so lifelike, it still unsettles people who see it today. Roman children also played with hoops, knucklebones, and miniature chariots, training their bodies and minds for the world they would inherit. Across the ocean, in Mesoamerica, the Aztec and earlier cultures created small wheeled animal figures. Even though, famously, these civilizations never used the wheel for transportation. The wheel apparently existed only in toys for centuries, a detail that still puzzles historians today. So why did children everywhere, across thousands of years and completely disconnected cultures, independently invent strikingly similar toys? Evolutionary anthropologists believe the answer lies deep inside the developing brain. Play is not a distraction from survival. Play is survival training in disguise. When a child throws a ball, stacks blocks, or pretends a stick is a sword, their brain is rehearsing coordination, risk assessment, social bonding, and problem solving, all without real danger. Cognitive psychologists call this practice play, and it appears to be one of the most powerful learning tools nature ever designed. Animals that play more as juveniles tend to be more adaptable, more social, and more intelligent as adults. Humans with the longest childhood of any species on Earth may have taken this further than any other animal in history. This is where the story becomes almost unsettling. Our prolonged childhood, far longer than any other primate, may not be a side effect of evolution. It may be the very engine of human intelligence. Toys gave children a safe space to fail, to repeat, to imagine, and to build the mental flexibility that eventually allowed our species to invent language, tools, agriculture, and cities. Archaeologists studying these tiny artifacts now believe something remarkable. The objects we once dismissed as simple trinkets may actually be some of the most important evidence of how human civilization advanced. A spinning bone buzzer in the Ice Age, a wheeled clay animal in Mesopotamia, a jointed doll in Rome. Each one is a fingerprint left behind by a child's imagination, thousands of years before anyone wrote down a single word of history, and maybe that is the most extraordinary part of this entire story. Long before pyramids, before written language, before empires rose and fell, a child somewhere was already playing, spinning a disc, rolling a cart, hugging a doll clothes at night. The tools changed, the materials changed, the civilizations rose and disappeared, but underneath all of it, something never changed at all, because somewhere right now a child is holding a toy, completely unaware that they are doing exactly what children have done for over 2 million years, reaching for something small, something familiar, and using it to make sense of an enormous world. Across every culture, every continent, and every age of human history, that simple act of play may be one of the oldest threads connecting us all.